driving down the Santa Monica Freeway from the meeting on Saturday night, and you go out to San Diego to get the direction of where I lived, and I would find all of a sudden I was on PCH, you know, and I missed my turnoff of several miles, and did not even notice that I was so, you know, jacked up on coffee and good feelings after a good meeting. I was thinking, you know, it gets those things where I said, well, why me? You know, how did I find this? It's the only place I knew at this time. It was the only place in the world, and here I am. You know, why me? I mean, it was a good why me, not a poor me. And so those are, I guess, little bits of this is it. You know, I found something.
My name is Mel Hellman. Clean date's October the 7th, 1968, Whittier, California. I was scared to death. I was 24 years old. I didn't know what my life was going to be like. And for some strange reason, I believed this program could save my life. If I was just to get out there and do what they suggested for me to do. It's a fact that I haven't used since, so it's saved my life.
My name is Jack White. My clean date is December 15th, 1971, and I got clean in the Los Angeles area, originally from San Diego.
Good deal. Hey, well, Jack, we got some questions. You've been around a long time, you know, and Narcotics Anonymous has changed
It
from
has.
that time a lot. I mean, there was what, like a dozen or 20 meetings or something then, or
Not even that.
10?
Not 10. I think 10 was the outside.
Yeah. So there wasn't many meetings, and now there's hundreds of meetings, 52 countries or something.
Right.
And so NA has changed. Have you changed?
Well, I went from hesitant to open-minded,
Good.
basically.
In the beginning.
Yeah, I was very hesitant. I had a lot of experience praying where they weren't answered, so I was hesitant because of that. You know. But I believed that them other people who were talking about it believed. And so I was really kind of open-minded that way. I wouldn't. Jimmy used to slam his hands together and said, "You hear that noise?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "What's that?" I said, "I don't know." He said, "It's your mind slamming shut."
I didn't have a Jimmy's, you know, vision.
Right.
Of this is going to expand all over the whole world, you know. There was nothing like that because I was living in the moment. You know, I mean, even 5 years clean, I'm still acting out my behavior stuff, you know. It took me a long time to cut down the behavior. You know, I got a name out there.
Right.
You know, and sometimes I say, that's not me today, man, that's not me today. But, you know, it was like the moment. It was no thinking about tomorrow or what happened just yesterday. And, I mean, I could retire today and live happily and go all over the world anytime I want to. And that's just on the financial part of it, and the physical part I'm okay, and the spiritual part, which is the most important part, it's just unbelievable. The patience and tolerance. If I had all that back then when NA was exploding, then I would be in a whole better place, you know, situation. But I didn't have it, you know, because of my old behaviors.
So now, do you feel that your spiritual experience from the time when you first came in, you had your spiritual experience in Tehachapi,
Right.
and the progression of that to this day now had a lot to do with specifically with the steps, and has it changed a lot?
Well, yeah, it changed a lot because I put a heavier value on those steps, because, you know, even today, since 1990, my sponsor has a sponsor meeting the third Tuesday of every month, and we go through one step. And we've been doing that since 1990, and I haven't missed too many of those meetings. So we're constantly going over the steps, and then he asked the big question at the end of it. No, and you're, hope I got the answer.
Yeah.
There is no answer, see? It's
Yeah.
your experience.
Right.
And yes, I mean, there's no, the expectations is just way beyond, way beyond. Because I was just reading a book just not too long ago, and for the 12-step program is one of the fastest spiritual programs of the 20th century. The fastest. And you look at what NA itself has done, and just last night when we were looking at it, on the board, on the screen, it showed only the 4 meetings of the world. And then how's now there's 30,000 meetings of Narcotics Anonymous in the world. If somebody would have told me that in 1963, I'd say, get out of here.
This is where the first hotline, I believe that there ever was, to try to help addicts with the ideas that we had at that time. There weren't many of us, that's for sure. But we were willing to try these ideas and see if we could take some kind of a dent in the disaster that was taking place even then in the field of addiction. Things have changed a lot in the intervening years. I don't think we've gotten much better in many ways. We do know that thousands of addicts are walking the streets today that probably wouldn't have made it otherwise. This is only due to the dedication of a lot of people in the intervening years. People who are willing to put aside their own selves, their own self-will and their own ego in order to help others like ourselves. We have moved over a little closer to the house, and what you're looking at, I believe, is what originally was my roofing and later on my painting office. I used to paint and roof in the construction industry here in the valley for many years. And this is where actually the World Service Office, as we know it today, really got its start, because although there had been another World Service Office, and we'll go into detail about that later, down in Crenshaw, in one way or another we wound up in one little part of an office in the Menlo Street area of Los Angeles, in a building that belonged to suicide prevention, which was not really beneficial to our fellowship at all. We wound up moving out of there and into a 1.5 room place over a bail bondsman's office in Van Nuys, about 7 miles to the west of the house here, which didn't even have a parking place for a car. So you couldn't stay in the office more than an hour trying to do anything. We had very little literature and no facilities, honestly, to do much of anything. We used to go out and collect cardboard boxes from behind stores in order to send out the few booklets we had, and do many things like that. Cut up paper bags to wrap some tapes in, or to wrap some booklets in.
Jimmy and I, and Bob Barrett and I, and my brother and I, and even Gene and I, we talk about people. We get letters at the World Service Office from all over the world. And these people looking for Narcotics Anonymous, and we started thinking about, what if? And what if we got in Israel? What if we got in Australia? What if we got in Poland and places like that? But then that's all it was, what if? We responded to every piece of mail that came to the World Service Office. Somebody would respond to it. Jimmy would, I would, Gene has, Greg Pierce would, Bob Barrett did a lot, So and people were hungry for the information.
Terry Ryan, clean date is 6/1/79 from New York City, originally.
And currently?
Heber City, Utah.
Nice. It's beautiful here. What a drive.
when I got clean, there was no Narcotics Anonymous in New York City.
Oh.
So I got clean in that other fellowship and was kind of treated like a moral leper. You know, oh, you're one of those.
I've heard that NA didn't start growing until some of the members in Southern California broke away and moved to San Francisco.
That move there, Mary Vargas was a social worker, and she worked with the schools.
Who was that?
Mary Vargas.
Mary Vargas.
Like the Playboy cartoons?
I don't know about how you spell it, it's just
Vargas.
Vargas, that's all I know.
Okay.
And she used to run up and down the coast here doing social work in terms of working with, kind of like misfits in a sense of speaking, in schools and so forth.
Ah.
And they were giving her a project to work out of Berkeley, University of California, to form some kind of a center that they could study addiction and addicts and so forth. She come down and recruited half of NA out of Southern California, and give them a job. And that's how they went up to Southern
That'll do it.
California. Yeah, that's right. I got pictures of Sylvia and Russ and them, you know. You know, working for Berkeley at the Ad Center. The Ad Center was, fact is, they had taken our little white book and made their little green and gray book called Ad Center book. So, you know, it's kind of one of these funny things, you know, they didn't change a whole lot in the book. You know, the things were pretty much consistent as to what we were doing with the little white book. But they added into it, you know, trying people in education or something, trying to help the addict, and they're the ones that started the meetings in Northern California.
Okay.
First one is, the fact is, one of the oldest meetings in Northern California is one of the meetings that they started in Berkeley. It's still on C Street, I don't know if I know the name of the street now, but it was on C Street in Berkeley, and that meeting's still going on. And from there, it went to Mission Street, Mission in San Diego, in San Francisco, then went back to, what's the town just below?
San Jose.
San Jose. San Jose became a big mainstay because they had a center there. The one that Bill was involved with up there in San Jose.
And then what progressed it, another movement north was Bice, Steve Bice.
Yes, Steve Bice, but at the same time, he moved up there about the same time.
Yeah.
There was
Just a
another
little
fellow
bit later.
that down that was in where assaults the dog Sebastopol.
Oh, that was Steve. He went to Sebastopol.
But he moved it further north.
What did you West Coast old-timers think of us East Coast newcomers?
Which ones?
Todos.
So y'all was doing two separate things.
I remember when I went to San Francisco in '77, it was like, hey, there's 2 members here from Atlanta for the convention. They
Well,
wanted
see,
to know
you
if I was
didn't come-
visiting family
see,
or
but
their own
you didn't come across
business.
the Mississippi about certain things, see? Most of the
Okay.
things y'all kept it on the other side of the Mississippi, see, and then you have to be bothered with it. I said the people in Jersey, they were rabble rousers. You know, they didn't like nothing nobody else was doing unless it was happening in Jersey.
Well, I had a friend, Maureen, and while I was in prison in New York, she was in prison in Florida, and we were writing back and forth. And she got clean in joint in Florida. I got clean in joint in New York. My aunt had 25 years in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I went to Florida to be with her for her anniversary. And after that, I drove down to Fort Lauderdale to meet with Maureen, and she took me to an AA meeting. And then after that, she said, "You want to go to a Narcotics Anonymous meeting?" And I said, what the fuck is Narcotics Anonymous? I had no clue.
Right.
So she took me to my first Narcotics Anonymous meeting. I had a year and a half clean. And when I got there, I met this guy, Paul E., was chairing the meeting. He asked me to speak at my first Narcotics Anonymous meeting.
Wow.
You know, and they always told me, when you ask to share, you share. So I basically spoke at my first NA meeting. I had no idea what traditions were at that time. I just knew I was glad to be clean. I had a year and a half clean, and I met a guy named Joe at that meeting, and at that time he had 10 years clean, and he was a heroin addict, After that meeting, I kept going to meetings down there, and people started putting a bug in my ear. You got to go back to New York and start Narcotics Anonymous and this and that.
When all that crap happened around 4 and 9, that
Trace
was,
is 4-9 the basic test.
yeah.
I don't remember, but I've heard about it.
Initially, 79 wasn't bad. I went to the World Service Conference in 79, it was my first conference, and I liked it. I had a great time. It was really cool. I mean, there was a few testy moments, and another look went to literature for review, and then it went to the fellowship for approval. And literature made 2 small changes, like a comma someplace. I mean, just something. I knew in my mind when I saw it that it was something that they needed to do to put their stamp on it. I wasn't on the literature committee at the time, but that's what it was. It didn't mean anything either way. And Jimmy had a fit. I mean, he had a bloody fit.
He wrote that idea.
Yes, and he said if they didn't take it the way he wrote it, he was pulling it, and the fellowship would never see it again. So they approved it the way Jimmy wrote it. It didn't matter. I mean, it didn't amount to a hill of beans.
What's the real story on Jimmy getting locked out of the office?
I think it was in Stone Book, the whole thing that how it went down. He didn't hire himself.
No.
The conference hired him.
Yeah, that's right.
We had hired Bob Stone to be what do you call him?
General manager.
Parliamentarian.
Yeah.
Because we was about to make some directions and some orders
For 2
as
years,
to how
I
to
think
run.
it was.
Huh?
I think Bob Stone was a
Couple of
parliamentarian
years.
for 2 years.
Yeah, I'm saying, a couple of years. And we needed somebody in an official capacity in order to make it proper and correct. And you choose a parliamentarian to make sure that the votes go right and people are chosen correctly and who got something to say in terms of protest or to carry out after by vote. And you do it just like you do it in the Congress and everything. They have to go by the numbers. It's not because you upset and everybody, you can't please everybody, so to speak. And the choice was made for a number of reasons. It wasn't talking about locking Jimmy out. Once they put Bob Stone in charge, Bob Stone went around and couldn't find the keys to half the locks were in the place, so he had the locks changed, for safekeeping.
The day he got locked out, it was in June of '83, and I only remember that because I just looked it up in my book to be right. And I talked to him that day, and I can tell you he was devastated. He was broken, and he was totally shocked as to why he was locked out of his life's work.
It's obvious that Jimmy had keys to those locks. Was
Well,
he not willing to
some reason he
give?
couldn't get the keys.
Was
I
he
don't
not
know.
willing to give the keys to Bob Stone?
I have no idea about that part of.
I mean, because there was keys around there, you know.
Well, they probably were, but I
And,
mean, they said a lot of places the locks were not locked.
Or so maybe Jimmy was so offended by what went on, maybe he refused to
No,
give them.
this was, one thing, it happened in a kind of orderly procession, you know, of the way things, that's the reason Bob was kind of chose, because he was the one capable of organizing some things that Jimmy was not capable of organizing. It's not maybe that's an oversimplification of it, because he had been doing what Jimmy had done for years, you know, the way Jimmy does things. But it wasn't in order in terms of business. And Jimmy, he had found out that the locks had been changed, and he had not been given no keys.
Yeah, well, that's the point. Why wasn't Jimmy given a key, you know?
Well,
Maybe he stayed home a
hey,
couple
we're
of
talking
days.
about, sometimes it takes more than just a click of the finger or a snap of the finger and say, it's done.
Well,
I'm just sort of go, hey,
yeah.
hey,
Loose ends.
yeah, we're talking about what
What are we
happened.
talking
We're
about
not
here?
talking about, I had to be satisfied with what happened, you know. But that's how that happened, and that's how the story gets out. And if somebody builds on that story, huh?
Well, I'll tell you
It's
what.
almost
though.
like they go up there, they say,
Yeah.
got their 38 special and say, get out of the office.
So what was Jimmy's reaction? Does anybody
Jimmy
really know?
was pissed off.
He was saddened by it.
Well, he was more than sad. He was pissed off.
Yeah.
He
Oh,
was
yeah,
sad.
yeah.
I don't know about that sad
Yeah.
stuff. It's soft.
Probably sad
He was
too.
sad.
You know why? And I'll tell you why Jimmy was mad. Because it was a lack of respect for the man that had brought NA to that point. And all of a sudden now, you're out to pasture, we'll take over. We know better. We can organize things better than you organized them. And I've been to the warehouse where Jimmy had it. It was organized, but it was his way, and probably not as professional as it was later on. Certainly it wasn't, you know. But the fact is that Jimmy brought everything to that point, you know, and then in a moment, he was out of it. And that's pretty shocking. Pretty shocking. It was shocking to me. Very shocking to me. And I don't think there's a real explanation yet about why all that happened, or the fact that they disrespected Jimmy enough not to come and say, hey Jimmy, we're changing the locks, things are changing, here's a key. You know? I mean, that would have certainly been the respectful thing to do. And it wasn't done.
Well, there was a member designated to do that, which
Yeah.
was Chuck
Well,
G, and he said he couldn't bring himself to do it. And therefore, that's where the loophole occurred. Our expectation with the lit conference and all the lit workers that were just written the basic text was that Jimmy was being given a break where he didn't have to worry about all the clerical crap, and he would stay on as a symbolic leader and spokesperson like he had been doing, and everybody thought he was doing a good job. But he was shocked. I always thought he'd just been out sick for a couple of days and hadn't gotten his key yet. But we all expected him to stay on the office. I mean, if there was never a movement that I heard of to get rid of Jimmy. We never heard that on the East Coast. And I knew of everybody, just about. And we were like all shocked and saddened by it.
But you see,
In
it's
our-
not
in our
always
own
what
way.
you say. It's not always what you say. It's what actually happens. You know, you can say, "Oh, we didn't intend to that," and we love Jimmy. But the point is that love and appreciation was never manifested itself in something physical. You know, it just wasn't manifest. You can talk about it all day long, but it never showed up.
He was running that office on his Social Security checks. That's how he was paying the rent. And he was eating Campbell's soup. You know, he wouldn't take help from my husband and I when we wanted to take food to him. He was a very proud man.
You know what? The founder of Narcotics Anonymous is Jimmy Higgins, man. He's the promoter. He's the man that made it happen. If it wasn't for him, and it wasn't for a few other people who were members of the old Bar None, remember that group?
What's that?
Bar None group out in Santa Monica.
Oh, yeah.
we would have never happened. Eventually, we would have because it's in the divine plan. You know, narcotics might would have happened, but it wouldn't happen at that